we'll probably move around a little bit as we're kind of going through this. Really what we want to share with you is I guess, Newcastle's journey. And there's a number of elements to that. I want to give you a little bit of the journey around how we've worked within the local authority, which is where I work, and how we've tried to embed asset-based practice, to coin a phrase, and also how we've actually taken that practice actually into the community, and talk specifically about a project that's been run by a Bright Ideas group called Small Sparks. And I'm just going to be really upfront with you. It's not some magic idea that we've created. It's something I have stolen really from Seattle in America, and actually came here as part of the in control or self-directed support that some people in social care may know about. So we've actually just taken that lock, stock and barrel. So it's not something we've created. Oh, how do I?
This one? I'm doing it.
Oh, you're doing it? Fantastic. I put this up really because I think this is what asset-based practice is about. You know, we can, if we really get it down to the raw bones, it's actually about developing the skills and capacities of us all, whether that be a square or a blob. And it's how do we take that forward, and how do we work much better together, valuing everything we bring. Yeah, please. In Newcastle, we've kind of had a bit of a struggle around asset-based practice. My background's actually learning disability services, and we used words like person-centred planning, which actually is asset-based practice. In our children's services, they use terms like strengths-based practice. And I really like before when a speaker was talking about actually these words are just irrelevant. It's about how we behave. So to try and get our kind of senior people really to understand that it wasn't just a drop in as we operated in many ways before, where we kind of dropped in, done a bit of a project, the money had run out, we got some outcomes, but oh dear, we've got no money, we've got no resources. Wait a while, we drop in sometimes there again, or sometimes somewhere else. That actually it's about a much longer journey, and it's about a process, not a project. So, in an attempt to try and put that together, we started to put the blue lines, which is really the process, I guess. And then under that, we put a little bit of a description about what that was. So about valuing people is about actually, you know, what we were talking about before, about what's happened in my life, what's the good, what's the bad, what's our relationship like, is that good, who can I bring together, what journey have I been on. But then also underneath on the orange bit, some of the tools that we already have, some of the skills that we already have within the council and our partners that we could use and utilise. But again, what was very apparent was some of those tools weren't in the right place. So for instance, when we did some of this work, things like some of the big event management stuff had been done by our learning and development team. Our communities team hadn't done work around kind of whole systems work and all of those other words. Appreciative inquiry had been, a lot of people in children's services had training in appreciative inquiry. Why aren't we utilising those skills in a much better way, a much more cohesive way? So we put this together as a way of kind of talking about the journey for communities, I guess, but actually we've been using it also within the City Council around what's our journey as the City Council and our partners, and how can we go through this journey to start to learn and develop. And alongside this, we've actually developed a number of workshops, and part of that workshop's actually the video that you've just actually all watched, which I think many people will resonate with who've been in services and around for a long time. You know, we've had times where we talk about engagement or we talk about participation, but actually we're not really valuing people. So that's kind of the high level work we've been doing in Newcastle, and alongside that looking at some of the systems that cause us blockages, because quite often people are up for doing this work, but the systems stop us. So how we commission, how we allocate funding, how we allocate, you know, whether something's a successful project or not, what are the outcomes. So we've been looking at all of those things as well. Next one, are we?
Okay. Just by way of illustrating some of the things that Karen was talking about, Carol and I are going to talk about a piece of work that we've been doing in a ward in Newcastle called Kenton. These labels are actually things that we've taken from our Newcastle Future Needs Assessment. So this is where we collect statistics and information about parts of the city, and we start to try and understand and evidence what the issues are. So I'm sure you all recognise all of these labels, and they're all pretty negative. In one neighbourhood in Kenton, which is called Cowgate, these labels were used to develop a strategy. The Cowgate strategy was a 3-year plan to create interventions to address some of these issues. It was, and still is, led by professionals, designed by professionals, and very much about doing things to people, not with people. Alongside the Cowgate strategy, the Kenton ward was chosen to be a pilot for neighbourhood community budgets, and with the backdrop of the Cowgate strategy, we had the challenge of then trying to work across the whole ward. I must say that the rest of the ward don't share the same labels as the Cowgate neighbourhood. In fact, probably in some of those neighbourhoods completely the opposite. So the community budgets pilot, we thought we would really try to use it as a first step to working quite differently, to using an asset-based approach, and to build on some of the work that we'd already done in Newcastle. We've been pioneers of participatory budgeting, and our You Decide programme is nationally and internationally recognised, so we have a long history of community governance around spending public money. We have this Cowgate strategy, which has got some fine and laudable ambitions, but not a great deal of community involvement. And as I said before, it's much more about doing things to people. It's actually very enforcement orientated, and we have the backdrop of the community's budget, the community budget programme. So Carol is actually going to talk about the first stage of our community budget work. I just want to say that we're learning as well. The community budget work that we're doing is a new kind of phase for us. So we're fascinated by what we've heard from the other projects. It's really good to hear. And all our community workers in Newcastle have new roles now. Our titles have changed, and our focus is about enabling and facilitating. So we're trying hard to work differently. So over to Carol.
Well, I'm a blob from Kenton. Thanks. I was asked to join the project, and I couldn't really understand why. I'm 65 and a bit, and I've never ever been involved in anything like this before. I don't work, but I've got lots and lots of jobs that I do. But anyway, I agreed, and we set about creating Small Sparks. Now, Small Sparks is a community-based development, and we had the money. I've got the money in my bank.
Not my personal bank.
Not my personal bank. And we decided that we wanted to spend this money in a certain way. Now, as a group, and the group came from the local communities, we've got 3 distinct areas in our ward, and very much separate areas. We're separated by a very large piece of grass, which is called the town moor, and a very big road. And actually, very often, we don't talk to one another. Nothing happens. You don't go over there. That's not something you do. However, when we got together a group from all the different areas. And what we wanted to do was to pull together a grant scheme that would allow us as a community to work and spend the money for the benefit of our ward. We had, these girls help us loads, I have to say, we couldn't do without them. But we had the responsibility for deciding what it was we were going to do with the money. We pulled together the documentation, we agreed to the funding limits, we developed a website so that we could use it for determining whereabouts the boundaries were, etc., and for putting information out to anybody who wanted to read it. And eventually we sent out some documents as, if you like, application forms. So we developed an application pack for applying for the first budget. It went really, really well. We had 20 people eventually ask for money. And between them, they got £250 each. But it was £250 which they had to use with matched funding. So they had to put the equivalent of £250 in time and effort and money and what have you. But we had some great ideas and we had a brilliant summer through it. It's been fantastic. If I just tell you some of the things that we did, we had, I did 3 days bringing children in for a play day through the school holidays because there's no way for the younger children to go. We created a rainbows group at our local church that's an ongoing thing that's going to run for years and years and years, but the money helped to set it up. We did raised gardens for wheelchair users, pie and pea suppers for old people. But the most important thing about this money wasn't the fact that we were spending it in the community. It was the fact that all of a sudden there wasn't a main road there wasn't a big piece of grass there. We actually could talk to somebody across the road, and all of a sudden we became friends. And now we work together in friendship, and we do an awful lot of things together in the community. Very much partners, which we never were before. When everybody had completed their event, whatever it was, we got together to celebrate, and we had a really great day. Karen insisted that there was no alcohol and the food had to be healthy, but never mind. But we had 18 projects running. We had over 200 people involved in those projects, and they were all people within our own community. We had it, and it's kick-started something that's going to run and run and run. We don't want to stop it. We feel as though we're in control now. It's us that's going to say to the council, this is what we want. What we're doing after the event, we have applied to people to come and join the panel. So we want some new people on. We're starting now to look at what we can do next year. And what we want to do first of all is to get information from all our local groups to say what they think is the most important thing in our community to make it better. Now it could be health, it could be poverty, it could be austerity, it could be IT help. We just don't know until we pull all the information together. And that's the road that we're going down now. And we're people that every day we're not working like you guys. We're doing all our general work, normal work, etc. We're just ordinary people, but we're making a big difference in our own community. And the results are brilliant. I mean, that's all I can say. I've made friends in places I didn't even know existed. Never even been there before. So I think as far as I'm concerned, I would say to all of you, look round your local communities. Encourage lay people to come and help you. We're energised when somebody comes and says, what do you want? But even more, we're energised when we see that we're getting what we want. And it's really, really important that you do that and you don't just make decisions for them. Because I have to say, sometimes those decisions aren't the right ones. So that's...
So really, just to finish, this is some of the labels now that a group might have, which are very different labels. But what I would say is, this is the tip of the iceberg. You know, there was 100 people came to that event. There's a lot more people live in that locality. So if that's what a very small number of people can do, who knows the boundaries? But I think also for us, from a Wellbeing for Life perspective, you know, there's things we've grappled with for a long time, things like intergenerational activity, another little catchword. That pulling together of people had people in from 3 to 95, all in one room having a good time and all speaking to each other. Many of the projects that were carried out, because people chose what they wanted to do, the only kind of criteria was that you had to meet 2 new people. That was the basis of getting the money. You had to share something you were passionate about and meet 2 new people. Not really hard. Many of the activities that were kind of led by older people were actually for younger people. So the cheerleaders you saw, it was older people who applied for that money, not the young people. And a lot of the young people actually applied for money to do activities that would benefit the older generation. So just naturally they did the stuff that we've grappled with, I think, for a long, long time and tried to bring people together. They just did that naturally. Also at the session, there was a little bit of education. There was a group of young men who were ex-alcoholics who are on a recovery programme, who've actually been doing some work with older people in a high-rise block of flats. They'd applied for some money to make the outside of the flats look much nicer and plant up some pots with the people who lived there. But totally out of the blue, at the celebration event, they actually stood up and shared some of their stories. We hadn't asked them to do that, but actually they were really, really giving a lot of information from the heart to some of the young people who were there about the issues of alcohol and, you know, the damage they'd caused to the community they'd lived in and why they were there today. And they actually presented that tower block of people with a cheque for £1,800, which we were kind of blown away. They'd done some additional fundraising. Now, it's not all about money, because actually a lot of that stuff you can't do with money. And I think from a city council's point of view, we often say resources are a big block. And I think we've got to get that out of our mindset, because actually we can start to look differently to things. And I think sometimes it's easy to say, the system doesn't work that way, or the resources can't be moved. It's actually how creative can we be, and how much can we lift our head above the parapet and be ready to be blown off, but actually take that chance and take the risk, because asset-based practice in reality isn't a smooth ride. You've got to do things that are a bit different and a bit risky. So you've got to be up for that challenge. But what I'd say is the rewards are much greater than the way we've done things in the past. I think there are some huge challenges. I work alongside our public health team and our local authority commissioners, and they're often saying to us, so what are the outcomes? I don't know, people have been on a journey, they've had a good experience, a bad experience, they've learned things, they'll do things differently. What do you want me to measure? It's really difficult, because actually what we currently measure are counters. You know, have we done that? Tick, tick. How can you measure somebody's changing in culture, somebody's changing attitude, somebody's different learning experience? So I think we've got to really think quite differently about how we do that. And that's something we're struggling with in Newcastle as well. So, you know, you won't be alone in that. And I guess the other thing is joint working. I cannot kind of say how important it is to have joint working, and when I mean joint working, I mean across everybody who's working in Glasgow or in Newcastle, because everybody has something to contribute, and it's about how do I really value Carol's story as much as my public health data, because actually they're written in very different ways, they're measured in very different ways, but what I would say is Carol's story is much more valuable than the data I hold, because the data gives you those other negative bubbles. And I'll leave you with that. Thank you.